Hey guys, this is John and I'm playing River137 in a 5+5 game on chess.com. My opponent opens with d4. What do I want to play today? Let's play knight f6. My opponent is rated 1731. I have my tea ready. I'm wearing flannel, even though it's 85 degrees Fahrenheit for some reason. Okay, knight here. Let's play e6, flexible move. I don't often play Queen's Indian or Nimzo Indian, those sort of defenses, but long term, I would like to add them to my repertoire. So, okay, and my opponent goes for the London system. Let's play for c5. So a reliable setup for black against this move order is to play c5, b6, and fianchetto this light square bishop, because when you put your pawn on e6 on move 2, much like the French defense, if you want to compare it to an e4 opening, you may have trouble with your light square bishop. So fianchettoing it, getting it to this long diagonal is pretty wise. Okay, so I could play knight h5 and go after this dark square bishop, but I'm not quite ready for that, so I'm going to play bishop b7. I do know in this setup, you sometimes have to watch for the knight coming to c4 really quick. So I should take that into consideration. I think bishop e7 is fine here, so on knight c4 I can play d5. And I'm just looking to castle. And now with bishop e7 having been played, I'm more seriously considering knight h5, going after this dark square bishop, because bishop g5 can be met by bishop takes g5. Big difference there. So I'm going to think for a second as to whether I want to go for that. I'm very tempted to do it. Yeah, knight h5, and if the bishop goes here, I can play d6. I'm going to do it. Let's go after that bishop pair, because if white gets a chance to play h3 and then tuck the bishop on h2, we're going to have, it's completely fine for black, but we're going to have a slower pace of play. I'm going to seize this opportunity to grab the bishop whenever I like. So thing is here, I don't have to take it yet if I don't want to. It might be better to take it only after white has castled. I don't think white's in a great position to attack me, even if I do take, but it does open the h-file. But yeah, for now, I'm definitely thinking about just castling. I don't think this bishop's running away anywhere. We're kind of holding it hostage. So let's just castle and see what white does. Interesting that white put the bishop on e2, because d3 is the more usual square. All right, so now white does castle, and I'm going to take, because now if h takes, I'm not afraid of anything happening down the h-file. And do I want to play d6 or d5? I'd like to get my knight in the game. I could play knight c6, although that blocks the scope of the bishop. I think d6 and knight d7 is a good flexible plan. d5, I'd be blocking my light square bishop again in a different way, so yeah, I'm leaning towards this. The only thing is white has a chance to play e4 and maybe seize some of the center, but I like my bishop's long range against white's center, so I'm going to do this. So inviting white to play e4, but I like knight d7, maybe knight f6. Very solid looking position. I could try to take on d4 at some stage, but I think keeping the tension for now makes sense. Maybe after I play knight d7 and put a rook on c8 against white's queen, which has just appeared on c2, it's going to be better to do that. So yeah, let's play knight d7. Hope you guys are all having a great week. I am doing very well. Staying busy lately, posting a lot on YouTube. Thank you guys so much for watching. Okay, bishop d3. So now I have a decision whether I want to play g6 or h6. I think both are fine. I don't feel like this is a decision I should sweat too much on. I'm going to go with g6. Just adhering to this principle that if your opponent has a lone bishop, you should try to arrange your pawns on the same color as that bishop to block it. Okay, so trying to block it out. Rook d1. All right, so white's rook is aligned with my queen, but there are many pieces in the way. I'm not afraid of discoveries right now. So I think I'm going to play rook c8, and this potential alignment seems more relevant than the one white is trying to set up here. So rook c8, and yeah, white has to more seriously consider this capture now. For one thing, white couldn't recapture towards the center if ever I take. So okay, queen b1, I think that's a sensible move. Yeah, just get rid of any problems involving c takes d4. I'm thinking about queen c7. Looks like a good time to just get my queen off the back rank, connect the rooks. Bishop takes g6 is not a concern because I have it double protected by the two pawns there. Now, if you're deciding between h6 and g6, as I said, in the position where I was considering it on move 12 here, I think both would have been fine, but if I have a choice, I usually like to play the g-pawn forward, because when you play king g7, both of your pawns on the sides are going to be protected. Okay, rook e1. So white is playing very flexible, solid chess, but in doing so is allowing me a number of plans. I'm thinking about creeping forward on the queen side now. Yeah, a6. Let's do that. Looks like a useful move. White may want to prevent further expansion by playing a4, but then that pawn is a weakness. Could be potentially undefended. I think it's too early to go for something like queen c6. I wouldn't be threatening mate. I'm just going to sit back for a moment and see what white wants to do here. But, okay, and white does play a4, so white's playing a little bit of preventative chess here. Okay, maybe now queen c6 is a more serious option. So attacking that pawn and looking to prop up b5 seems decent. If bishop e4, I can play d5. Blocks my bishop, but looks plenty good. Don't see what I'm going to do with these two pieces. I think my rooks are fine where they're at. I mean, this rook doesn't look like it needs much improving for the moment. So, yeah, let's play queen c6. Good time management by white so far. I'm behind on the clock, but the position is not very sharp. I feel like I have enough time to continue making good decisions. Okay, bishop e4. Definitely going to play d5 against that, and I'm guessing white's going to come back here. And now, okay, my play along this diagonal has been blocked. I wonder if f5 is a decent idea here, because white may be looking to break with this move, if given the chance. I feel like f5 is a nice way to squeeze and shut down an attempt by white to break out here. I don't think I need to play c4 or even b5 yet. I think just take away the most logical pawn break that white has in the position. I like this move a lot. And notice how this pawn is buttressed by two pawns here, and even my rook on f8. Seems thematic. When you play a move like this, so the eye in the center, this e5 square, got to be aware of that, because it could be a juicy square for their knight to jump into, but as long as I keep my knight on d7, I could maybe even shore it up with my dark square bishop coming here. It's fine. It's fine to have that weakness. I think what I gain in control over e4 is well worth the semi-weakening of the e5 square. Now, one interesting move here for white is to play c4 and try to explode the center. Create some tension with the pawns, more tension than there already is in the position. But given the way white has played so far, I would not expect to see that move. But white is in the tank here. If white does play that, debating what I want to do. I wouldn't want to take here because I feel like knight takes is going to be an issue, attacking my queen and my pawn. I might just play a consolidating move, something like rook fd8, or maybe even king h8, just to avoid any future trouble on the diagonal. Okay, king h2. Definitely don't like this move. Seems awkward. It seems like it just might give me a possibility of bringing my knight here in the future. Although for now, yes, I think I should keep my knight guarding this square. I'm thinking c4, and then b5, b4, try to squeeze white. You know, with the two bishops, usually you'd be looking to open the position, but I think playing this with a clear further pawn break plan that white really has a hard time stopping is pretty attractive here. I mean, if white's idea is to try to attack me with rook h1, king g1, I would definitely invite that, because I don't think there's any future in that plan. Whereas I'm going to do this. Okay, and white does go rook h1. Yeah, a good way to judge potential threats like this is if you give your opponent a couple of consecutive moves to implement their plan. Is it even dangerous for you? And after king g1, I don't see what white's follow-up is. Everything is solid here. So let's go ahead and play b5. Getting the pawns rolling. Because once my pawn hits b4, b3 will be a threat, trapping this bishop. And the tension's going to favor me, because white's not going to want to take and ruin their structure to some degree. So, okay, white plays king g1. There's not even a danger of white doubling yet, because it's just very awkward with their king in the way of both rooks. You know, got to make sure a move like rook takes h7 works. Doesn't work here, but it's too far-fetched in this position. So pushing with the pawns, threat of b3. I'm guessing white's gonna move this rook, yeah, to give their bishop access to the d1 square. Okay, now this is an interesting moment because b3, tempting move to further squeeze white, but I think that does white a favor. I think I'd rather try to play this at some moment in the future. So how can I increase the pressure? Maybe even doubling rooks on the A file is a decent idea here. Let's play the rook over here. I don't think it's doing anything on the C file. I really doubt e4 would work here. Looks a little too crazy to play that. Okay, queen d1. So now if I play b3, bishop b1 will be the answer. I could sink my rook all the way into a1. But again, it's hard. The only weakness white has is this. So maybe I should do rook here and attack the pawn on b2. Let's do that. Getting a little bit lower on the clock, but 5-second increment is nice. So rook in. I got to watch this a4 square. Beware, white is shooting at that a4 square with 2 pieces, but I feel like I'm getting a nice grip on things here. This doubling coming. Yeah, let's just play it. You know, a move I maybe should have looked at earlier for white to try was g4, but was pretty skeptical, and it seemed like I was distracting white enough on this wing. g4 as a way, if takes, to try to open this diagonal. You know, especially with the queen on b1, maybe white had that. I think now it's too late to try that, though. If queen b1 at this point, b3, bishop b1, I will play rook a1, and that queen will be trapped. But as far as what I'm going to do next, maybe queen b6, take, queen into b2. Okay, so white plays knight b1. Yeah, I think I still like queen b6 here. Looks good. And I'm going to play it quick. Try to keep pressure on white's position. Pressure on the clock. So looking for a take with this b file being open. I think queen b2, even if there's a queen trade, I like the prospect of doubling rooks. Maybe that f2 pawn will be in my sights. You know, white could try e4. Take, and then queen into h6. That would be an aggressive way to play, but I think knight f8 always covers everything. I wonder if white will try to go for that at some point, though, now that knight b1, white's no longer blocked. But yeah, knight on f8, there is no mate. Their knight could jump into e5, but I'm not believing it. 27 seconds now, so I wonder if white's going to go for that or if they're going to try to stay passive here. Knight e5. Okay, I think I should trade. And then do I take on c3? I think I will. Yeah, let's take. Take c3. Open the attack here. Because if white recaptures with the pawn, now queen b2 is looking real nice, as I was describing. Let's come in. Attack this bishop. And this is also going to definitely shut down any e4 attempts by white. Okay, take. Now this other rook is working its way into the position next. Yeah, I think white's losing a piece here, actually, because bishop d1, I can play rook takes on b1, and if rook c1, the rook comes in. Oh, okay, white could play bishop d1 at that point, although they would lose f2, which also looks pretty bad. Maybe I even have rook a1 at that point. Could play rook a1 here, but I think better to force that bishop to d1 first. So white might play king h2, so yeah, let's do this. Invade. Yeah, notice my pawns on light squares. Just giving that bishop grief. Okay, and my opponent lost on time, although I think the position is losing. So yeah, if bishop d1, I probably would have played rook takes f2. Looks like a nice pawn to pick up, and I'd be hitting g2 as well. But rook here, also very tempting. So say bishop d1, rook a1. So the knight is pinned, so the bishop would have to go back to c2. And if I want, I can do this and pick up 2 minor pieces. Don't know that I would even want to play this, though. Okay. And thanks to River137 for the game. It was an interesting one. I could try this and maybe eventually go after the c3 pawn, but I think in that situation, it's better to take on f2 and keep all the threats. Yeah, Yeah, it's just such a dominating position for black. Bishop f3, and I could go after various weak pawns here. I mean, look at white's structure. Every pawn is isolated. So, something like bishop g5 or bishop c5. Yeah, could really start twisting the knife here. Let's say even rook here. White can't play king h2 because of rook takes f3 and they're pinned. Okay, so I felt in control for most of this game. Now, River played a solid game, but if I were them, I would have thrown in h3 earlier in the opening to give that bishop the h2 square. So I think bishop e2, probably not the most accurate move there. I think h3 and be able to drop the bishop back. I was mentioning this knight c4 possibility. I think if white's going to do that, they typically try to do it a little earlier, like knight bd2, bishop b7, and then knight c4. So maybe I'll show that line in the analysis. As played, though, yeah, I think white played a little bit too hesitantly. A lot of these moves appear logical, centralizing the rooks, and I like queen b1, but I think there was some hesitation on white's part. Most likely white should play e4 somewhere and take the center. I was daring white to occupy the center with both of those pawns, and I understand that they may come under fire from a distance, but as played, if white doesn't alter the structure at all, I really fail to see how white's going to get much counterplay here. And I mentioned I have this pretty straightforward plan of playing on the queen side, so yeah, I think I would have tried e4 and maybe some sort of central play if I was playing white, e4, e5. Yeah, because as played here, I think black has a serious grip on the position, and I was really criticizing king h2, rook h1. I just don't think this plan is strong enough, mainly because the rooks block each other, and also it's just a time-consuming plan. So, that being said, though, a critical moment was definitely when white played knight b1, and I played queen b6, because there is this possibility of e4, which I did not see at the time that knight b1 was played. But sort of a hidden resource, and it may not be good. But, fortunately, I have this knight coming to f8 to defend, and I would bet that black is doing well here. Some solid here. If knight g5, I can just take it. Knight e5 is probably critical, and I was thinking either take here or maybe bishop f6. Probably bishop f6, just so if white sacrifices here, take, and I'm covering both these h7 and h8 squares. And also the knight even covers g6. So, for myself, I wish I would have seen that after knight b1, e4 was on the table, but it looks like it doesn't work, and white was kind of running out of time there. I was trying to move fast to keep white under pressure. Because, yes, as played in the game, white's just way, way too passive. Sometimes when you're playing defensive like this, you reach a point where even the most solid play in the world is going to be breached by an opponent who's grabbing space, putting you under pressure. White can't hope to hold the queen side forever. There's just a huge disparity in the piece activity, number of pieces. I have all my major pieces hitting white's weaknesses. I kept this tension for a long time, you can see, so when I take, it had greater effect when my queen came into b2. So I'm definitely going to check that moment, though, with the engine and see if e4 was at all working for white. Also g4 earlier. I mentioned that in passing. Like maybe white could have tried g4. See if I can pinpoint a moment where perhaps it would be decent. Probably not here because b3 is a threat. Maybe here, or g4. It's at least something that comes to mind. Even here, I feel like I could play b3 here and take if I really wanted to. Looks sketchy for white. So, yeah, I think a major takeaway for River in this game is to play more actively earlier and also try to guard that London bishop. Be aware that black may be looking to play knight h5 and go after it. You could also make an argument that white should avoid castling here, because I mentioned I was holding off on castling until white does, so that when there's a trade here, I'm not afraid of the h-file pressure. But maybe white could have played this a little more actively. Say, knight e5 is a move that comes to mind, trying to attack here, although it does leave g2 undefended. Maybe bishop d3. It's possible the bishop should just go to d3 in general in the position. So, yeah, at this rating level, people tend to be pretty decent tactically. They're still not above making tactical mistakes, as none of us are, especially at faster time controls. This is a 5+5 game. But I would start trying to think about how you go about planning in the early middle game, especially. You know, you should be trying to, especially at this rating level, come out of the opening with a plan, some general direction of play. And sometimes just playing solid is not enough. Okay, so let's click over to the analysis board. Look at a few different things. Yeah, so I believe knight bd2 is a potential move order here. Let me just pull up the opening explorer in this position. Yeah, knight c3, another move. Knight bd2 and knight c3 actually score higher than c3. I'm just using the opening explorer on chess.com. But yeah, knight bd2, if black plays bishop b7, I want to say there's a trap. Yeah, knight c4, looking at the d6 square, so 2 pieces trained here. And if black plays d5, knight ce5. Yeah, I've seen several players fall for this trap where white is actually threatening knight g5 going after this pawn. So say black plays a6 to try to cover bishop b5 check. They can be met by this rather embarrassing knight g5 and yeah, double attack here. So I think that's probably the more ambitious way to play. Had white played that, I'm not sure what I would have done. Maybe bishop e7, knight c4, d6, although that runs into d takes c5, which is an issue. Could think about playing d5, but that feels sort of antithetical to the way that I was hoping to develop. Looks like the main line is here, knight c4, yeah, d5, knight ce5, and knight bd7, looking to trade that knight. But undoubtedly, white has some pressure. Yeah. I don't have a ton of experience from the black side of these positions. I have a bit of experience from the white side in co-authoring a course on the London system for Chessable, which I'm sure many of you guys have checked out or even purchased. Thank you for that if you have. But this is one reason I prefer d4, d5 systems and taking on d4 and trying to develop this light square bishop out pretty early. I think there are some precise move order issues that white may be able to exploit if black is especially just playing sort of on autopilot. Okay, so let's consider the way the game played out. Also maybe here, worth checking the opening explorer. So I was recommending h3, and yeah, indeed, h3 is the most popular move here. 191 games. Bishop e2, as white played, only played in 7 games from this position. And I wonder if the move I played, knight h5, is one of the reasons why. Only happened in 1 game. 2 games, I guess. Okay. But yeah, knight h5 to me looks pretty good in this position. So I definitely like the idea of h3. Not h4 Simon Williams style, but h3. Being able to drop that bishop back should black ever attack like this. And then, you know, develop bishop d3, castles, queen e2 oftentimes, and look to push in the center with e4. I think eventually pushing e4 in the middle of the board is a good idea for white. You can also sometimes play a3 and b4. Now, let's just say hypothetically something like this. Let's just say d6, castles, knight bd7. e4 makes sense, occupying the middle of the board, pawn duo, controlling territory. But yeah, I've also seen people play a3 and try to go for b4. A little bit of pawn action going on. I do think white should get pawns involved in the mix. Okay, so as played, just going to check a couple things with the engine. I feel like this position is slow enough where I don't need to load the engine for every move. If I was doing a really thorough, rigorous analysis, I would, but okay. Maybe one thing I should check. Okay, so I was also recommending c4 here. I really think white has to create some sort of issue for black before I avalanche on the queen side with this push here. So what about c4 in this position? The computer definitely already likes black by about a half pawn. It suggests a5. Be trying to weaken black structure. What about c4? Because as I mentioned, if I take, knight takes, that hits the queen and hits e6. So I wasn't thrilled about that prospect. Yeah, I was mentioning I would probably play a reinforcement move. The engine likes bishop f6 here. That makes sense. Just inviting white to capture twice, whereupon I would have great center control with these pawns, although they are the so-called hanging pawns. Okay, so yeah, c4, if black handles it properly, looks like white's not quite situated. we'll just step forward a little bit. I definitely want to see if e4 was playable for white coming up. Okay, well here I saw g4 was peeking into the top 3 suggestions in this position. g4, b4, b3. Okay, b4 is interesting. Try to fight back on the queen side. I mean, I would think taking en passant would be the thing to do against that to open up the attack here. This looks to be a pawn sacrifice. Yeah, I don't feel like that should be good for white, or should indicate that white has a decent position here if that's the best option. What about g4? It seems weird to play g4, especially with the king blocking. So if e5, yeah, white can go bombs away on g6. Got to watch out for that, trying to open this diagonal, which I was really striving to keep closed by keeping all my pawns on light squares here. The engine wants me to play e5 or knight f6. e5 looks pretty violent. I like knight f6. Gives away this square, but I guess I can always play bishop d6 and pin white if that's the case. If take, wants me to give a check. King here, e takes. Yeah, and I keep pretty good control over this position. This looks nice. But at least white has offloaded one of their doubled pawns and momentarily stalled my queenside play. So back to the game. King g1, b4. Yeah, and again, I was threatening to crowd this bishop here, threatening b3, if given the chance. And keeping the tension. And rook a8. Computer also says b3 is fine, but I think this is a classic case where, unless I have a really good reason to play b3, I shouldn't do it, because white taking here and me being able to take back with the bishop, attack their knight, white isolates their b-pawn in the process, it doesn't feel like that's the proper way to play it. So queen d1, yeah, it's just really difficult for white at this stage. Rook comes in, queen c1, I doubled, rook here. Now, if I knew that e4 was more of a possibility now with the queen lurking, maybe I would have played something prophylactic here. Although the knight coming back to f8 is a great defense. I also wonder... Okay, so what did I play? I played queen b6, which is the top move of the computer, and it says I'm good. I was also wondering if e4 takes knight e5 is playable, with the idea knight takes... if knight takes to play queen h6 now. That would be interesting. I mean, I could play knight f8 even here. The engine also points out queen c7, but it feels dangerous. I mean, I'd have to pause and consider what to do here. And it may be an unpleasant surprise when, you know, your opponent, me in this case, is loaded up on the queen side, ready to break through there. I think I have the other sides of the board on lockdown, but then abruptly you switch gears and you start attacking. You know, I think for white that was definitely their best practical try. Yes, the computer says this is dead winning for black, but I'm not a computer, despite what some of you guys may say, that I'm a robot. And it would have been hard for me to defend here. Yeah, I like e4. Even knowing that e4 is not in the top 3 moves of Stockfish, I would still play this in the game situation that white had. Because better to lose in a volatile way where you had chances and your opponent had to sweat, versus losing with absolutely no counterplay. I mean, this top move, knight bd2, I just take and play my queen in, kind of like I was advocating, and it just feels bad. Could even play bishop c6 as a preparatory move, yeah. So let's explore this. So e4, for one thing, it wants me to take with my f-pawn, which feels a lot less natural to me. I would probably take with this pawn. Queen here. And as I was saying, knight f8. Knight e5. Okay, yeah, and I guess white's problem is there's just not really a threat. I like this bishop f6 move to defend. Okay, knight d7 is nice, though. I didn't see knight d7. Yeah, see, if this had happened in the game, this would have been a huge unpleasant surprise. I would be relaying to you guys my my frustration in having allowed this in the first place. And again, it doesn't work. Like, take, queen takes, king f8. Computer says black's, like, completely fine here, if not winning. But it's scary, man. Queen takes g6, queen takes d7. White has that rook lurking. So that being said, I wonder if I should have played something more prophylactic here. Like bishop f6 maybe? On bishop f6 he can perhaps take b4. I don't know. It's an interesting question. So it would have made the game sharp. e4. I'm pretty sure I would take this way. I don't think I would have taken with the f-pawn. Here, here, knight here. Yeah, I could see bishop f6 being played and some craziness. I also maybe would have decided on this, because if white takes on g6 and gives me a check, I think I should be able to escape pretty easily. White doesn't have enough pieces participating in the attack. White could try knight d7 here as well. But I think, yeah, queen c7 should be a good defense. That's not a intuitive defense, though. Take, bishop takes, and my queen is guarding this pawn. I mean, I almost want to say, with hindsight 2020, and if I knew that white might very well go for e4, I almost want to say I should play queen c7, specifically so that when queen h6 is played and white's pieces are springing to life, that I have some potential defense of that pawn, some potential reinforcement. Okay, but as played, so what did white do here? I think they played, what was it? I'm trying to find a game continuation, but I think I got off track here. Oh yeah, white did play knight e5. Yeah, take, and then I took right. Now white could try it here, but it feels like it has a much reduced effect here. Yeah, f4 is a good reply. And if queen takes f4, probably rook f8 and switch to the attack on the queen and the pawn on f2. So if queen h6, I can take here, the king comes here, and then the rook is not helping the queen attack h7. Yeah, because white took back with the pawn. My queen came in, double attack. White has to trade, and it's too passive, way too passive. This is a -7 position in black's favor. So, yeah, I was saying this, and probably just take here. Okay, so very interesting one. I think there were a number of considerations there, from white's point of view, trying to retain that bishop pair. If you're a London system player, you want to try to retain this bishop pair. If black tries to hunt it down, at least try to gain something from that transaction. And also the importance of finding a plan in the early middle game. I think once you get to this rating level and higher, like, you really got to be getting out of the opening and immediately find a plan, or ideally even have a plan before the middle game hits. And the final major thing I would say is going for counterplay in a tough position. If your position's just objectively lost on a maneuvering level, or your opponent's going to slowly win, you should be looking for ways to take a calculated risk. And even if you lose more volatilely, more sloppily, let's say, it's worth it. It's the same amount of points, 0, when you lose. So you might as well try to put your opponent on their back foot versus letting them work their way into your position. So thanks again to River. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll be back again soon with another one. Bye, guys.